So welcome to the first part of the Office 365 training series. One in what I hope will be a continuing series as long as it remains relevant for us to do so. Hopefully, and what I'm hoping will happen is that this will kind of start to evolve, and as you guys go through the training and start using the tools more, you will start to come up with ideas and things that you would like to see, questions that you have about using Office 365, how all the different applications interact with each other, and we want to see more in the form of this kind of training. So what we're going to cover today are mainly SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. So I just want to make a distinction between OneDrive and OneDrive for Business. What we use at AUB is OneDrive for Business. OneDrive is available to the general public as a consumer level application. You can go over to Microsoft.com and create an Outlook.com email address, and you will get OneDrive with that, and they'll give you a limited amount of space for free, kind of like Dropbox. And when you think of OneDrive, think of Dropbox. I'm sure that most of you have used Dropbox here, and it's basically the same tool. This is a cloud-based storage, and that's what OneDrive is. So when we talk about OneDrive, we are talking about OneDrive for Business.
Is anybody else trying to join us? Like
I gave them the Blue Jeans link,
okay.
But nobody else has joined.
Okay.
But I am recording this,
okay.
So it'll go up on the web, so people can do it later. All right, so what are the two main, so we'll go over what the two main differences are between SharePoint and OneDrive. It's one of the questions that comes up the most. Right, Barbara?
Yep, I'm always asking everything.
And she's not the only one. Every time I speak to people, I actually ask my wife if she was using OneDrive at work, and she says, well, I use SharePoint, and it's like the same thing. I said, no, it's not. And so this is a confusion, a major point of confusion that people have about OneDrive and SharePoint. And hopefully I'll clear that up to some extent for you guys today. Then we'll go over how SharePoint and OneDrive for Business work together. Why use SharePoint and OneDrive versus the file server. We're talking about the F drive here and the S drive for some of us. And I hope to show you how SharePoint and OneDrive for Business are used, and that is creating folders, creating documents in each one of them, synchronizing those to the desktop and other devices, and how to share these files, folders with your colleagues. Okay, so what are SharePoint and OneDrive for Business? So the main thing about SharePoint, I remember early on, Allison asked me, what's the difference between SharePoint and OneDrive? And I gave a very simple answer, and I said, SharePoint is a site, and OneDrive is a drive. Right? But SharePoint is a whole lot more than just a site. It's not an application either. It's a whole platform. SharePoint.
Can you give examples of other platforms? Like Google Docs, is that a platform?
Google Docs would be considered a platform as well. Okay. Yeah. One of the things that as I went on Google and I said, what is SharePoint, just so I could kind of digest that and be able to simplify that and give you guys a simple explanation of what SharePoint was. I really couldn't come up with one, and people out on the internet are just as confused as most people who encounter SharePoint on what it is and kind of put a finger on exactly what it is. And that's because it is a platform that has a lot of different components that work together, that some can be used together with other ones that could be used on their own, and some parts you wouldn't even get around to using. So for now, let's just say SharePoint is a platform, and the main thing that you will use SharePoint here at AUB will be as a team site. That is, for now, as we begin to use it, will be used as for building team sites. And what I'm going to show you as far as SharePoint goes and the usability of it will be in the form of a team site. Fair enough? All right. So yeah, so SharePoint is a collaboration tool. It's a great way for people to collaborate, sharing calendars, sharing documents, using versioning in these documents. You can share contacts. You can. It could also be used for workflows. So if you have, if you're in the middle of a project, and let's say you're working on a project for Rami, one of the briefings that is coming up, and you put together a PowerPoint presentation, and it's still a work in progress, and Barbara and Allison will be collaborating on that. You'll start with a preliminary skeleton of what that's going to look like, and then you'll pass it on to Barbara, who's going to put the some more touches on it until it gets to Eric, and he'll put the finishing touches. So that would be a workflow. Or if there's approvals that need to happen. I know we don't work that way here, but let's say that there were purchase requests that need to be authorized by Ada. That would be a workflow that you can institute in SharePoint. Then Ada, it would end up in Ada's mailbox, and she would approve it, and that could all happen in SharePoint. And we might find a way of taking the things that we do now and start integrating SharePoint into it. That's for down the line. So you can use, it can be used to create sites for projects and for departments. I think we've kind of started doing this a little bit with NYO Communications, setting up that site, right? And it was very recently where Barbara wanted to set a folder up that should have gone into NYO Communications, and they didn't figure out till later that that was the best way to go about it. We actually had created another site. And so, one of the things that you start to find out as you're using SharePoint is that a lot of the workflows that you do within one team can all be incorporated into existing. So, it is a learning process, and there's really no mistakes that you can kind of draw back from, as we saw with that example that I gave of that folder. So mainly what we're going to be using it for is a place to store and share documents, calendars. Angela kind of alluded to something today with the shared calendars. It's something that, once we get a grasp on it, will become a very powerful thing for us. Contacts, something that I could see development using quite a bit. When you guys have like all these people that you contact on a regular basis, and there might not be one central place for it. So instead of you having your address book and Angela having hers, you guys can have a development site set up for you, and you can not only share the documents and kind of create workflows around that, but also have these contacts that you guys can keep in one central. I think you guys might be able to find that valuable asset too. And then it's also accessible to anyone who has read, print, or edit rights on them. So one of the great things about this is that as you're working in team sites, you don't always want everybody on the team to have the same amount of rights to all the documents on there. And you have a lot of control within there to be able to give appropriate permissions to people. One of the things that happens...
Can I just ask a question? You mean if you're creating the site, you can then create other owners as opposed to just people who are going to use members. So it's owners, members, but the only authority, and then once somebody has the authority of an owner, they can create other owners?
If you're an owner, you pretty much can do anything on that site. So you have to be very careful of when you add members to your site, what kind of privilege you're giving people. And what I would say best practice would be to start them off as members, and if you see that they are actually people who need to be owners for whatever reason, it's very easy to go back and just make them members. Whereas making them members right off the bat, and then there's a big oops, and then, so I think it's always a better practice to kind of elevate privileges instead of downgrade them after something has happened. And after you create, and the members and the owners in these sites, and you and they have certain rights within there, you can still go. It gets very granular where you can actually go to certain folders and then give people certain rights on it. So even if there is an owner on there, actually, let me backtrack on that because owners do have quite a bit of ownership on this, but other members, you can actually have it so that only certain people can see that document. So if you're within a team and you only want, the project leader of that team to see it, or just a couple of people, you don't have to make that so that they'll see the file there, but they won't be able to see the contents of it. They won't be able to click on it. All right, sounds okay for now? I know it's a lot of information I'm throwing out there.
This is a quick question. We have some folders in OneDrive that are shared among, say, Barbara, Eric, and Najib, and me. And so we all can go in there and use those documents that are there.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between that and sharing them on SharePoint?
What's the difference?
I mean,
They're just storing them on SharePoint.
I'm already using OneDrive as a shared
Okay.
tool. So
Right.
should we be using SharePoint as the shared tool?
And
So
not
here's the thing, right? And let me say this again. So when you're like where this SharePoint site that you have these documents in, right? So that document portion of SharePoint, that's OneDrive.
Okay.
Okay? Remember I said that SharePoint is all these different components that work together and don't?
And that's one of them.
And that is OneDrive.
Okay.
So
That's
once you
driving
create
that.
something on OneDrive, it's automatically created on SharePoint.
It's
No,
in-
that's not. Well, if you saw how when you synchronize, so when hold on a second, when you have a site and you create documents on it, you create a folder, you're going to synchronize that in order for it to synchronize to your desktop, right?
To your desktop?
Yeah, to your desktop,
Okay.
like the way it synchronizes to your computer. Right?
I'm
So-
not fine, sorry.
So here we go. I'm actually going to take you guys through this, but I'll say it real quick like this. You have documents in the site, right? You synchronize that folder to your desktop or to your iPad or to your phone, right? Now, whatever you see on the website, on the SharePoint site, you're going to see on that device, right? If you create a document on your mobile device and put it in the folder of that site, it will then sync up to that SharePoint site document library.
Once it's synced.
Once it's synced, yeah, once you sync it. And then you can then be on another device and put things in the folder of that SharePoint site. And it will replicate to all the different devices that you have and all the different people who have access to that folder. So everybody's always seeing the same thing. Now, they are revisioning, right? I mean, you got people doing, if you guys all have the same document open, and Ada's changing line A, you're changing line B, you're changing line C, and you guys are doing it at 305, 309, and 312, you're going to have different versions. You're going to have 3.02, 3.04, and you're going to have 3.09. That will be they break down that way so that you will always see which one is the latest file revision that there is. If you decide that 3.09 doesn't work, you can go back to 3.04.
But you can put restrictions on it that make a read-only file and the person can't edit it. I mean, if that's what you're doing.
Yeah, but we're
what's the
talking
purpose of
about,
having
but
the
we're
same-
talking when we're actually collaborating, actually working on it.
I thought he compiled.
Right,
So-
exactly.
If somebody creates like a site, let's say we created an NYO communications site, then there is a site, like I know there's a place where you can go and it says site and it shows you the sort of activity for the whole site.
Yeah.
And then you could also create if you create a folder within that site, that's like part of using the OneDrive app, and that was when you see that, as if you're creating it underneath this site heading, then you'll see that folder come up and you'll see.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. And I'm actually going to show you guys this. So I'll tell you what, if you guys could just hold on to your questions so that we can get through this, because if not, I'm going to reach the hour and I'm not going to be able to get through this.
Well,
So I'm gonna,
understand it as you go is also important.
okay, yeah, and I think that once you guys see me go through the demos, it'll clear things up. And, if there are things that are not clear as we go along, if you could just jot down the question, I'll answer it at the end. All right, so some of the features of SharePoint and OneDrive for business. Store and synchronization, which we just went through. You store your files there, synchronize them through different devices. Share and collaborate is a big deal. I mean, collaboration is one of the biggest reasons for cloud storage to exist, right? And SharePoint and OneDrive is the Microsoft solution for this, and that's what we use. And this might not matter to everybody here, but it should, especially since what we went through in the last couple of weeks. It meets security and compliance requirements, and that covers HIPAA, ISO 2001, FISMA, and a few other ones. All right. So when do we use SharePoint and when do we use OneDrive for Business? That's a big question I get all the time. So when to use SharePoint? SharePoint should be used when you guys are setting up a team or departmental site, right? If you guys just want to share a file with each other, then just create a folder on OneDrive. Like, there's no need to create a whole site that has all these other bells and whistles just because you guys want to share a few files. There's no need for that. That's just, you can do it and it'll work, but you're just you're using a sledgehammer for attack. You don't need to do it. So when creating a team or departmental site, it allows for document sharing, it allows for collaboration, communication using team email address. So when I created the NYO team site, right, that right away created a team alias, nyo@aub.edu.lb. By the way, all of them are going to be LB. Because, any site that we create is going to have the LB extension on it because all this lives in Beirut servers. So that becomes a great way for you guys to communicate. So communications, AUB, NYO communications. If you just want to reach Barbara and I mean, see, the thing about it is that here at New York office, we're such a small team that it's not a big deal. So you just say Eric and Barbara and just send them an email. But if it were a bigger team, it'd be easier if you had 15 addresses that you had to put into the to field to just send an email to NYO communications, right? So, some of these things like, well, we do it that way. Well, it's made for organizations that have a lot more people. Now, if you want to also reach Martin and a couple of other people in communications, include them in that site. Make them members of that. And you can send emails and reach them all at once down. So that's one of the ways that it makes communicating a lot easier when you use SharePoint. Yammer is also something that's available. I think within my first week, I told Data, how come we're not using Yammer? Also because it's a small office, so people just kind of get up off their seat and just go into the office and just ask other people for whatever they need.
You used it for a while. Some people used it too much. Some people
just didn't use it at all.
Some people recorded every single email that you wrote, and then some people.
Yeah. So Yammer is like an instant messaging app
Yeah.
For Microsoft Office, and I remember the front desk person used to use it a lot whenever we got packages. We didn't have somebody like Bobby over there, so it was like, oh, you got a package up at the front, or lunch is here, and everybody, we use Slack over there, but it's kind of like Yammer kind of serves that purpose. Actually, Teams is just like Slack, and I hope we get around to Teams at some point. I just haven't, I feel like SharePoint kind of does everything that we need to do. But Yammer is a really cool tool, and there's times, I love seeing you guys, but sometimes I want to walk all the way around the office just to go ask Mary something. Like, I just wish I could say, hey, Mary, da-da-da. Then she could just reply, and then that'd be it. And then, we'll check each other out at lunch. Like, I'll see you later. But it just makes it easy, especially when you're like in the middle of doing stuff, and to stop what you're doing, to go and get what you need from somebody and then go back to work. For me, it ruins my work. And maybe that's just because I'm all over the place.
Not mine.
Yeah,
It's just instant messaging, though.
it's just an instant messaging, yeah. So we could give it a shot. I'll send out the link to it.
I love Yammer.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's give it a shot. And
Will we have to download the app?
it's part of that. It's part of the waffle.
Okay.
It's part of the waffle.
Can we yammer people in bigger?
You, as long as they are running Yammer. I've yammered you a couple of times and you've never replied.
No, never, nothing showed up.
Right. You gotta be running it. So that's.
So
the
we have to
caveat.
turn it on.
Yeah, it's like people could MSN Messenger you, but if you don't have MSN Messenger, you're not gonna get it. This is, all right, so shared calendar, we've gone through that too much today, and shared contacts. I put a little asterisk in it because I wanted to talk more about it, but I kind of already, I think, made the point about that. All right. And I spoke about the different sets of rights for users on there. So you can really control the way your site is, used by assigning different rights to people and how they manage that. And also creating a blog. I don't think we blog enough. All right. So when to use OneDrive for Business? When you need to access files from more than one place. And that means, so creating this PowerPoint, I worked here, I worked on the bus, and I worked at home. And I used my computer here, I used my phone on the bus, and I used my computer at home. Three different platforms. Huh?
Is that the waffle?
What's that?
The thing?
The waffle is the 8 squares, 9 squares.
In the upper left-hand.
No, on computer. Is that OneDrive?
I'll show you the waffle. I'll show you the waffle a little bit. So when I was creating this document, I was working on all these different platforms and different devices, and as long as I saved my document on OneDrive, I was able to go and continue working on it on the bus and then close it out and work on it at home when I got it. And it saves automatically. You don't have to remember to save. It just saves every little change that you make on there, every letter that you're typing, it's saving to the cloud. So that's a huge advantage of working on Word on your computer.
And you can get previous versions.
And you can get previous versions as well. So when sharing files with people, I'm beating this over the head. But also, if you want to share with people outside of your organization, this is a restriction that we have on SharePoint right now, where we can't really add people to SharePoint to join our team that are outside of AUB, and that's an AUB restriction. That's not a SharePoint restriction. That's just what AUB decided to do. And it makes sense because we're a closed organization. At my last job, it was open, but that's because we worked with outside clients all the time, and they had to be a part of the team that, whatever project they were working on for them. But with OneDrive,
a trustee or somebody who has to.
right, so with OneDrive, you can. Yeah, so with OneDrive, you can. So that's the great thing. And we do it for the board. We share with people from all over the world, and different corporations and universities. So that's what I was going. You can't do it on SharePoint, but you can on OneDrive. And also when you need to work on the same file with others, which is collaboration, and even if they don't have Office 365. So let's say that you share a file, a Word file with somebody, and they don't, for whatever reason, they just don't have Office on their they can edit that online. So it'll open up a web page for them, and it'll be Microsoft Word with all its bells and whistles, and they can work on it, do whatever, and then they'll say close because it's saving automatically, and then you'll get to see what the changes are or what their input is. But they don't even have to have Microsoft Office.
It should be on a Mac.
Yeah, they could be on Linux. They can be on an iPad, on an Android device. And they don't have to have Office installed on their computer.
A way to see, a way to see what changes people made to a document, or do you have to compare it with
No, you can see what changes were made. Every time that you look at a document, it'll say last edited by.
Yeah. And then but it'll highlight say the words they.
Oh, that depends. that depends. I think that there is a part where you can say what changes were made. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I know that I've seen that though, but I'm not sure if it's on changes where you share with somebody and get it back. Look into that. All right. All right. So how does SharePoint and OneDrive for Business work together? I've alluded to this a few times, but I'll go over it real quick. OneDrive for Business is a component of SharePoint. That is where the documents get stored, shared, and edited. When you work with SharePoint Team Site, OneDrive for Business helps you synchronize your documents with your desktop and other devices. I kind of spoke to that a few times already. On its own, OneDrive for Business is used for all the same functions without necessarily being attached to any team site. So really think of OneDrive as, or think of SharePoint as a very modular platform. And the only module that I'm really speaking of besides SharePoint is OneDrive right now. So OneDrive can exist on its own, be this Dropbox type of application that allows you to collaborate and store and share files with people, but it can also be part of this more powerful platform called SharePoint. All right, so SharePoint and OneDrive. Okay, so here's why I make my case to you guys. All right, why use SharePoint and OneDrive instead of good old F Drive, right? Well, how many people here access F Drive from home?
I used to.
Show of hands, just real quick. Not that many people feel the pain. I have. It's a pain. But that's the way you access file servers, and the way you got to do it is you got to log into the VPN. You got to map the drive. You got to make sure that the drive is mapped. Since we're going on these two different domains now, you got to remap it. Sometimes you got to learn the IP. It's become really cumbersome way of working. When you are on OneDrive or SharePoint with a synchronized file structure being driven by OneDrive for Business, what you have is a set of folders on your computer all the time. And you no longer have to log onto VPN, map the drive, deal with the slowness of a connection through VPN. Everything is being driven by the internet speed of wherever you are. So if you're at home, hopefully you got 100 megabit files and you're just getting the documents quickly. Portability, it works across all platforms and devices. Granted, so does F Drive, but you're still dealing with all the other wonkiness that I just spoke about. It's web-based, right? So even if you don't have Microsoft Office available to you on a computer because you're at your mom's house and she's still using Office 97, you can still open up that file and work on it and be able to do what you need to do. And you can share files by sending a direct link. So each file has its own little link, and it makes it a lot easier if you just share that link with people instead of sharing the whole file. Maybe the file is really big, and there are restrictions to that, in your email. So that would be one reason to do that. But mainly it's because when you share a link, everybody's linking back to the same document. So if you were on a file server and you wanted to share a file with 5 people in this office, you would be sending it to 5 different people, and they would exist on 5 different computers. And now you have 5 different versions of that document floating around. Right? And then who knows when one person is going to upload it again to the F drive and the other person, you don't know what's happening and what versions are going up there, right? With this, you have everybody working on the same document at the same time. And that document updates itself dynamically. All right? So the last person to touch it, that's the last revision. And again, you can go back. If the person who made the last revision, shouldn't have deleted that paragraph, you can go back to the previous version. So big reasons to use. Okay, so now I'm going to go through some demos here. on, how many people here have used OneDrive and SharePoint? Right, so all right. So you heard the word waffle, and I know it sounds really weird, but this is the waffle up here on the upper left-hand corner. And when you go into your Outlook, or when you go into Office 365, is maybe the best name for it. You will find that waffle on the upper left-hand corner, and that's where all your applications are going to be. These are all the applications that AUB has paid for us to use.
There's more than that.
There are more than that. If you go to the All Apps, you'll see a whole bunch of other applications that you're free to explore. There's Yammer. We'll talk about Yammer another day.
Office 365 is not compatible with Vista and Windows XP.
Office 365 on the web-based should be. It's not. If you go to the website, it won't work. You shouldn't be using Vista and XP anyway.
Not here, but I'm just saying, usually if you're at your mother's house and your mother's using
Either one of those things shouldn't be. If you have enough, up-to-date browser, you should be able to use it. And XP is only going to go to a certain browser, then it can't support it. I know so.
And we have all different operating systems here. I still have Windows 7.
Yeah, we have Windows 10 and Windows 10 in it too. All right, so how do you get to SharePoint and OneDrive? Just real quick. Here's OneDrive and SharePoint. That's how you get to them. So you log into your Office 365, and this is how you get to them. All right, so I'm going to go into OneDrive, and I'm just going to show you the structure and the navigation of that. All right, so here is what OneDrive looks like on the web. All right, here you have your files. If you're looking for the stuff that you worked on most recently, you're going to find it on the recent files. Stuff that you've shared, you're going to find there. Stuff that has been shared by you, and stuff that has been shared with you. So if somebody shares something with you, and you don't have to go necessarily to their site, all you got to do is go to your SharePoint and look on the shared with me, and that's what those documents will be. Anything that you share with anybody, look there. So if you're not sure if you shared something with somebody, and maybe you shouldn't have, then you go here and you check to see if you did, or I thought I shared it with you, but it doesn't show up there, so let me go ahead and share it with you.
And the only person who can remove it is the person that shared it, right?
That's correct, yeah. Discover. I'm not exactly sure what Discover is all about. I think it's just things that are probably getting a lot of views, and it's a suggestion for you to look at. And then the recycle bin. The recycle bin doesn't sound like much, but if you delete stuff, it's good to have the recycle bin because it holds on to stuff for 90 days. So, I mean, you got 90 days to really get your stuff together and get your stuff back.
That should be interesting.
Yeah. And what you see here at the bottom of that is all the different sites that I'm associated with. And when I click on those, what I'm going to see is the files of that site. Okay? These are files only of that site. The ones up here these are my files, right? These are the files of that site. So it's a really easy way to get to those sites. Desktop is actually not this desktop, but I have a site called desktop under AUB and YOT. All right. How do you share a file? There's several ways of sharing a file. You can either click on this little circle next to the document and click on share. When you click on share, you'll be asked only people in American University of Beirut, anyone, people with existing assets, specific people. If you're sharing with anybody outside of AUB, it's got to be anyone. Everything else, except, people in AUB and specific people, that's only going to be for people that, you're going to kind of type out the addresses for. And people with existing assets are probably going to be people on that site from people that you have given access to. That means you've got to make sure that you have given that person rights in your OneDrive to see that file, or else they're not going to be able to see it. You're better off just going with anyone or people in AUB or specific people. But with that one, you got to type other names. You got to know their email addresses. Okay, that's one way of sharing it. Another way of sharing it is you can. These are the same things. Copy link, and you'll get a link of the document. You just copy it and enter that into your email. Or you can just do copy link from here. It's the same thing. And just copy it again, you get the choice. There's a lot of redundancy in the way they do this, but they're always going to be different options of doing it. And then the other way of doing it is from these three dots here, there's a share. There's a share option there. And you can always preview it to make sure that this is the right. I don't want to open up that's very involved. All right, so that's how you share files. Okay, to upload files. Well, downloading is pretty easy. You right-click on that, and you click on the little dots there, and just go down to download. That's not the way to do it. You click on that, and click on here. Yeah, you should be able to download it. Oh, maybe because that's because it's a notebook.
It's up there. To the left.
Download.
Or is it the third one in?
Keep going to the left.
Oh, there's download. I'm looking at this too much. So that's how you would download. And to upload, just be in the folder that you want to upload to. You click on upload. What do you want to upload? A file or a folder? Click either one, and then you can just browse your computer and go about uploading as you would a regular. And something that you guys saw here while I was doing this is version history, right? And here are the different versions of this. I haven't really changed anything, but here you can see who it was modified by, right? And if I had, and this is version 1.0, I haven't done anything to this. It's really it's really just a picture file, so I haven't modified that. But you would, huh? So you would see the different versions. Then you could go back to any of those. All right. So moving files and copying files, you can move files within different. If you're in one of these folders and you want to move this to another folder, you can just click on Move To, and then you choose what site you want to do this on. Well, here's showing me how to move it to different sites. When things get a little cumbersome, because you think that Like okay, oh, my OneDrive. See, sometimes the things are right in your face, but can't, you can't make it out. Anyway, I could move it to another folder here, or if I wanted to move it to another site, I could do that as well. So, if I wanted this to be in my communications site to share with my communications team, I could move it there and just click on that, and I will get the file structure from there and just choose. And I wouldn't have to move it, I could just copy it, and it's the same process. Pretty much go through that. If I wanted to move to another folder in my OneDrive, just choose that. Or if I wanted to move it, copy it over to another team site, I could do it that way. All right. If I wanted to see the details, all right, so the reason for the details are, here's where you see who has access to this, right? And here you can manage access. So if you feel like you want to give access to certain people to this file, you can do it that way. And if you want to see if certain people have more rights than they should to it, you can change it here. And then it gets really deep where you can actually manage rights a little bit deeper. Here, I'm not going to get into that right now. That will be for another session. Okay, and manage access, I did that. All right. Now SharePoint. All right. You guys still with me? Have a little bit more ice cream, a little bit more cake before you fall asleep. All right, so here's SharePoint. As you can see, SharePoint is not as as simple as just a file structure, with some folders and files. Here it gets a little bit more involved, and so I'm just going to start off with the left pane here, and then I'll work my way over here, and then we'll talk about creating sites and this other stuff. All right. So what you see here are sites that I'm following, and they all have a little star next to them. Okay, and these are not all of them. If I click on See All, then I will see all the sites that I'm following. Okay.
Now they're blown away.
Here are recent. These are recent sites that I visited. Not all of them I'm following. If I want to follow BOT November 17, I click on the little star, and now I'm following that site. Okay. Again, that's not all my recent sites, but those are probably the ones that I visited the most. If I wanted to follow test 3, I would do that. If I wanted to unfollow a group, I could do that as well, just by unchecking this stuff. And here, featured links is very fascinating stuff. I don't know what the heck happened there, but these things are not working. Team site, public site, again, gets me 404 not found error. So I'm not sure why this is broken. This is part of the larger template. Really going to get into it. Frequent sites, again, this is pretty much like recents. Not sure why there's duplicate. You can't really modify this. It is what it is. So let's go over to creating sites. So when you want to create a site, all you got to do is click on that and choose whether you want it to be a team site or a communication site. Like I said, most of the stuff that we're going to be doing here is creating team sites. So with team sites, you can share documents, you can have conversations with your team, so it enables communication. It keeps tracks of events, and it keeps you connected with the Office 365 group. You give your group a site name, you give it a small description, you click next, and it's created. Okay. So I just created this AUB NYOIB site. All right. That's just what I'm going to work off of right now. Once the site is created, what you want to do is add members to it, right? So right now, I'm the only member. We spoke about this, about making people owners and, members. So I'm going to go ahead and add Eric. Might regret this one day, but I'm going to go ahead and add Eric. And since he's the media specialist, digital specialist. And I'm going to keep him as a member for now. And if I feel like he needs elevator rights to the site, I can always go back and just make him a member. Or if I feel like, yeah, that was a big mistake, I'll just remove him.
No.
So for a little while there, you were part of the AUB and YOT. All right. So that's pretty much what you do with adding people on there. So one thing that I want to go back to here is, I didn't touch upon the SharePoint site. If you're looking for a site that doesn't come up here, this is the place to look for it. So if you see a site here that's not coming up, can't think of one because I'm seeing other ones that I know. But that's where you would look for it, right there. What happens, the reason I brought that up is because when you come over here and you're within the site, this search now changes. You're no longer you're not looking within SharePoint. The scope of the search is now going to be for within this site. If you're looking for any document or any other thing that pertains to this site, this is, the search is going to concentrate only on the contents of that site. All right? Conversations. Conversations is a really interesting feature of the site, because from here I can see all the communications that I've had through that site. So I'm gonna actually go and choose. I'm gonna choose another site that has more communications, like our NYO. Wait, look for NYO. It's NYO not coming up. What is it called? Oh, here it goes. So here's the NYO, and if I look at the communications of NYO, the conversations, right? We're going to see all the emails that we've sent within that group. So I think this is really interesting, because this really helps your team communications kind of be sorted out pretty easy. Right? And then you can always go back to your own inbox. All right. Go back to OIT. How you guys doing so far? You guys getting this? I know it's a lot of stuff, but actually, if you just go down, if you just kind of go down through here and then look at the PowerPoint, you'll kind of get it. Pages is just more pages on the website. You can create other pages from here. Like I said, SharePoint is for creating websites, and you not only have that home page, and you not only have these libraries and lists, but you also have other pages that you can create on there if you do decide to blog, or if you do decide to create some kind of resource page, which I've done here. And I'll share this with you guys. This is basically the presentation. This is where the recording for today will go. And it has some additional resources on here that you guys can kind of check out if I went too fast, or if I just put the heck out of it. So calendar, I don't even want to go into calendar. I really don't, because the calendar here is so, this annoys the heck out of me, because this calendar here doesn't do what you would think it would do. This is not a shared calendar. You actually have to go and create an app to share the calendar. Site contents.
You have to create an app to share the calendar?
To create that team calendar, that's what I had to do. Justin, were you able to just do it on that calendar?
I think I did it on the
On the app, yeah, I mean, and that's a really counterintuitive stuff because if you're on a site and you see calendar there and it's supposed to, and everything else is being shared and you click on calendar and you can't share that calendar. I mean, so here's the thing, it's already shared with everybody in that group, right? But when you add stuff to it, it doesn't display, like it's just a blank calendar. It is the most maddening thing. And I've
Well, the
researched
app
it
will
all over, and
display?
the answer is you create an app within there, and I'll show you guys how to do that in a second. Site contents. This is everything within the site: the documents, the templates, the calendars, the pictures, everything that's been in the site pages. All right, sub-sites. I do have a sub-site on this, which is called desktop, and here's where I kind of sort of manage some of my projects. And that's what that looks like. So you can use this for project management, like as you would do MS Project, use that as that. I was just kind of playing around with that a little bit. All right. And the other thing that you can do, if all these things don't pertain to you, like if you really hate the fact that calendar doesn't, the fact that calendar doesn't work for anything, you can just remove it. And then you can save it, and then you never have to look at that calendar link ever again. All right. All right. So moving on to this area here. This area here, site contents. This is where you customize and administer SharePoint. And I'm gonna just stop right now and ask you guys. This is gonna get a little heavy. I don't have that much left to go. Do you guys want to continue? Or we can, you guys okay with continuing? I got maybe like another 10 minutes of material in there. But if not, I can incorporate this to the next one. Okay. All right. One of the things, this is a really good site. I think that Ada would really like this. Site usage. I don't know if this exists in the one that we're using now, but here's where you see site visits and new items being added on. You can kind of get a good glimpse of, what's been happening on this site. 250% over the previous week. That's because I've been using this as an example. So this is getting a whole bunch of views now. But if you have a site, let's say Eric, right? So you create this new New York office site, and you want to see if it's getting any kind of traffic. And from week to week, you can actually go into the site usage and check out if things are picking up. Or like, man, why is it that last week I had 70% usage, and this week all of a sudden it's down to 30? Like, what's going on? Maybe we need to update our material, or that new story that we put on there has really picked up the site. Now we're up to 120. So it's a good, it's a good quick thing to look at. It's a good stats kind of place to look for those things. The other thing is site workflows. I spoke to this a little bit. I'm not 100% familiar with it, but the gist of it is that if you're working with people who kind of have dependencies on some of the things that you do, and they need to, and they have dependencies on you can have this workflow set up where there's approvals and other people revising, editing, that kind of stuff. You can set that up here. I'm not very familiar on how this works, but I'll get a little bit more familiar with that and share that with you guys next. And site settings. Here's the one thing I'll tell you about site settings. When you go in here and when it actually pops up, don't do anything here. That's what I'll tell you. This can completely down your site. So yeah, you can play around with the quick launch and navigation and change the look of it. Don't do it. Just you want to edit the links on the side, go ahead. You want to add stuff to it, go ahead. But leave site settings alone, because I won't be able to help you out, and maybe somebody in Beirut will, but it might take a couple of months. And then the recycle bin, good old recycle bin. Again, if you delete stuff, it's in here for 90 days. We all make mistakes. I mean, you could delete a whole page and it will be in there. So, I mean, really, recycle bin can become your best friend. Um, did I go through that right? All right, recycle bin, yeah. For now, let's not touch any of these settings. Oh, and finally, go back to the home, and now we're going to talk about web parts. All right. So here's what Justin and I have been talking about a little bit. So from here, now this is within the site now, right? So before we were on SharePoint, you clicked on new and you got new site, right? Now we're within the site, so we're gonna get a listing of new things that we can put on this site. So we can put new lists, which are containers of information, right? I.e. contacts, documents, calendar. You can create a document library. It's a container for team documents to share and collaborate. A new page, which is like that desktop page that I showed you. It becomes like a subsite. A news post. I created this here by creating a new news post. So this is what they consider a new news post. And actually, I think Eric is actually working a lot with this, right? With this kind of stuff. Not just news posts, but like being within the site and creating all these different objects, right? And then the apps. Sorry, I lost my place here. But within my site, I want to create a app. Right? All right, and you see there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do here. The only ones that I've really played with here, I've played with tasks. I've played with document library. If you need to create a different one than the one that already exists. Form library. You can create a picture library. I helped Susan actually set up a SharePoint, creating a picture library that she could collaborate with her colleague in Beirut with calendar. So here's the thing that helped us create a shared calendar. You can call this anything. So here's the anything calendar. You can pretty much put anything on this. And from here you can actually create another calendar. And this is the way that we had. This is the way that Justin created the events calendar, where we had all the different ones in here. And did you create a new view or?
I created like 10 views.
10 views, right? So you create a view, that's what it is, and then
Each one was a different layer.
it's like a different
Those
layer.
are a real pain in the ass to create.
They are not a happy camper.
Me too.
When I was creating the ones to test.
The one thing is I could never find it from the actual SharePoint too.
So you just created a link and then that's.
That's find one in
That's
there.
much it. So here it goes. So here's the anything calendar. Anyway, I have to get a lot more familiar with web parts, but that's kind of like the power of SharePoint. There's a lot of different components that you can put onto it, and web parts is part of it. They get more involved, and hopefully in the future, tutorials, I'll be able to share a little bit more on that, and I'm gonna open it up to Q&A.
Did the tasks that were under apps sync with tasks that are in, whatever it's called, email? The tasks that are under Outlook?
Yeah, do they synchronize over with Outlook? I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure because even though I've played around with it, I never asked it to synchronize, but I can find out. That would be a good thing to have. Although Outlook does have,
Or it had an issue tracker, it had like an issue tracker.
oh yeah,
and
issue
tasks.
tracker is more like Jira kind of thing where where if you're doing development, you track different issues. So I don't see how we could apply that, but again, I haven't really delved that deep into some of these off applications. If there's anything there that interests you, I can definitely look into it and learn more about it. It's a lot. I mean, I probably have to go to school for 4 years to learn everything in SharePoint. SharePoint is as you guys can see, it's just a lot of components to it. And the crazy thing about it is that when I joined you guys in August of last year, I hadn't even been here a year. It's already gone through a couple of updates and changes and things that have been added to it. Every time I look at that waffle, there's new applications out there.
Is Beirut using it?
Beirut, from what I understand, is not using it as much as I think they should be using. And I was made to understand that it was they told me we want you to go in and start pushing SharePoint, and I thought it was because we had to catch up with them, and I think that was my line. Like my first 2 weeks here was like, hey, we got to catch up with them, and then
Because I don't think Martin.
No,
So
they're not.
exactly, so what happens when we start pushing it with our colleagues? Like if we move everything to OneDrive,
Right.
and I start sharing all my documents and stop emailing it to people and say, here it is, you guys start editing things here now on OneDrive, or here's the board site and this is where everything is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, so here's the thing, right? They may not be using it, but it's available to them. So we're not pushing anything on them that is not available to them. You understand? I mean, I'm not, I don't have this big pioneer spirit, but I think that we can definitely, be a little bit, less. Yusuf told me this, we need to catch up to technology.
Yeah.
I mean, and I am of the same mind. I'm like, we're doing a lot of stuff like file servers. That's so 1990s. We need to get away from that stuff. We are living in a cloud-based collaboration era. And we have the tools. It's not like, if we didn't have this, you know what kind of meeting we'd be having right now? Why don't we have cloud-based collaboration tools? That's the meeting that we'll be having right now. And we have it. And we need to start using it. And you know what? That's just going to push some people out of their comfort zone, and they need to start using it.
A lot of them are like, let's just use Google instead.
I know.
They're like, oh, let's Google.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, let's set this up in OneDrive. Also, it's on our
If somebody really says that, if somebody were to say that to me, I say, all right, send me the AUB Google. Right, because there is no AUB Google. Because when AUB looked at a cloud-based collaboration tool solution, they looked at Amazon Web Services, they looked at Google Docs, and the Google Suite, and they looked at Microsoft Office 365. And they decided on Microsoft Office 365. And I'm sure they had to go to a whole bunch of people and ask for a whole bunch of money to get Office 365. We need to use Office.
I don't think everybody there uses 365 because when we get our letters, who sends it to letters first? The acknowledgement letters. It says it has to be, it's like they're using 2203 or something. What's before
2016, 2013.
No, earlier. I'm sorry, earlier. 2003, I think.
2007?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's
They don't convert them after they download them?
first of all, that's unsecure as heck. Like we shouldn't be, nobody should be using that. But I get it. Look, I've worked at universities before, and universities, you have people who've been around for a long time, and they're just used to doing things a certain way. My wife works with a lady that she'll email her something, make a copy of it, go and take it to the desk and put it on her seat. She still does that. And she does that because she's so upset they don't have the carbon paper anymore. So there are people that, have a certain way of working. And you know what? Look, that doesn't mean that we stay there with them. I mean, and this is not a big leap. It's a good leap, but it's not huge. We're not going off into some wild unknown, and we're definitely not doing it outside of the scope of what the university is providing for us. So
But you can't get onto somebody else's OneDrive files unless they've shared them with you. So that's the tricky part, I think, in terms of initially using. Unless you send them a link to the document.
right. I mean, if they need to share their file with you, of course. Just like you, yeah.
I mean, the difference between a file server, anybody can go into anybody's folder on the F drive and find, and
Yeah, unsecured.
I don't like it. I don't think it's
Yeah.
right. But with this, they have to have shared it with you.
Yeah.
I mean, have to have you as a member of their.
Yeah. Or share with you explicitly through a link or
Yeah, but then you wouldn't
sending
be able to
you
go back.
a shared invitation.
Unless you're a member.
But that person knows who he should know who they share it with. Instead of like, I got some stuff up on the file server and who knows who might look at it or not. I think
That's right.
That's a really scary. I mean, that's why I always tell people when I create their user folders on the file servers, don't keep any information on there like social security numbers or filling information that's personal because anybody can get in there. So this should be work related. Like you need to share an Excel file with your coworker. That's where you put it.
How secure is Outlook for that?
Outlook.
Like Outlook contacts for that kind of information.
Well, Outlook itself is under the same coverage that OneDrive and SharePoint. The HIPAA and all those other organizations that require security compliance. The university has to be security compliant. So all our systems are security compliant. How safe is it? I mean, unless somebody has physical access to your computer, right? How are they going to get into your content?
It's like as safe as like that cloud
Yeah.
is.
I mean, and I'll say something now that Ada brought it up. You guys walk away from your computer, lock your computers. I mean, I know that we're in a safe environment here. I know that. But I think it's just a good practice. Control, delete, lock.
You mean when you're leaving to go home?
When you're leaving to go home and when you're walking away from your desk for an hour to go to lunch or, Ada goes to the kitchen to get some water, lock your computer. Just lock it. Because they control, delete, and you enter your password. I mean, I think her computer's probably set to go to sleep and then she got to put her line because Windows 10 itself does a lot more security than the previous operating systems. But it's a good practice to just lock these computers up.
How do you log in on your phone?
Yeah.
To OneDrive? Yeah, you can download an app. So what do you have an iPhone? Go to the App Store and look for OneDrive.
My goodness.
OneDrive?
Yeah.
And SharePoint?
Yeah, SharePoint as well. Just go to, do you really want to do that, Tom?
No.
You want to know why? You want to know why? If you do it when you're on Wi-Fi. Or else there goes your data. You're going to get like a call from Verizon.
Yeah, no, never mind. I was thinking about you working on the bus. On your
Oh,
phone.
yeah, OneDrive.
It's fantastic.
So download the OneDrive app, but not SharePoint. Probably.
You can do the SharePoint. Just make sure you got enough space. And make sure that you do it when you're on Wi-Fi.
Okay.
When you sync.
Yeah, you never have to worry about not having access or losing access to something.
I'm gonna go, put a bunch of sheets up on SharePoint so people don't ask me for new versions of it. The newest version will always be available to them. That's one thing.